Trump warns Iran as Tehran rejects nuclear talks amid U.S. military threats. Britain's Starmer meets China's Xi in bid to reset strained ties. Nothing normal in dealing with U.S.-Canada PM. Tehran rejects Trump threats, signals retaliation. Iran holds the edge in any war's endgame. U.S. President Donald Trump has issued a fresh warning to Iran, threatening further military action if Tehran refuses to negotiate over its nuclear program. In a social media post, Trump said he hopes Iran will come to the table and agree to a deal banning nuclear weapons. He added that a massive armada is moving toward Iran and warned that if no deal is reached, future attacks would be far worse than previous U.S. strikes. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi responded earlier in the day, saying negotiations cannot take place under military threats. He warned that diplomacy would fail unless Washington sets aside threats and excessive demands. Meanwhile, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman told Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian that Saudi Arabia will not allow its airspace or territory to be used for any military action against Iran. Both leaders said they support resolving tensions through dialogue to avoid war. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has met Chinese President Xi Jinping in Beijing, seeking to rebuild economic ties after years of strained relations between the two countries. Starmer was welcomed by Xi at the Great Hall of the People for high-level talks, followed by a working lunch. He is also scheduled to meet Chinese Premier Li Qiang. The visit is the first by a British Prime Minister since 2018 and is seen as a major step toward resetting relations. Starmer's Labour government has made improving ties with China a priority, hoping to attract trade and investment to boost Britain's sluggish economy. Analysts expect several business and cooperation agreements to be announced during the visit. The trip comes as Western nations increase diplomatic engagement with Beijing, partly as a hedge against uncertainty in U.S. foreign policy under President Donald Trump. Starmer's visit follows Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney's recent trip to China, which produced a new trade deal. China has welcomed the outreach, calling the relationship with Britain at a pivotal moment and expressing readiness to deepen cooperation. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney says there is currently nothing normal about dealing with the United States, as he faces growing questions in Parliament over how he is handling relations with President Donald Trump. Carney returned to Ottawa after delivering a widely praised speech at the World Economic Forum, where he warned that the U.S.-led rules-based international order is facing a serious rupture. His remarks earned rare cross-party praise, with opposition leaders calling the speech strong and reassuring. However, as Canada's new parliamentary session opened, opposition lawmakers challenged Carney on practical results, particularly over U.S. tariffs that continue to hit key Canadian industries. Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet asked whether negotiations with Washington remain normal and cordial. Carney responded bluntly, saying the situation has changed dramatically. Speaking in French, he told Parliament, "The world has changed. Washington has changed. There is almost nothing normal in the United States now." Iran's foreign minister says the country's armed forces are ready to respond immediately to any U.S. military attack, following renewed threats from President Donald Trump. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi wrote on social media that Iran's military has its fingers on the trigger and is prepared to respond powerfully to any aggression against Iranian land, air, or sea. He added that Iran has learned important lessons from last year's 12-day conflict with Israel and U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, saying those lessons have strengthened Iran's ability to respond quickly and forcefully. His comments came just hours after President Trump revived warnings against Tehran. In a post on social media, Trump said a massive armada is heading toward Iran and is ready to act if necessary. He urged Iran to return to negotiations on its nuclear program, repeating his demand for a deal banning nuclear weapons. "Time is running out," Trump wrote, calling on Tehran to make a deal. Iran's Revolutionary Guards say military pressure against the country has failed, and that Tehran now holds the advantage in any potential conflict. In remarks reported by Iranian state media, IRGC spokesman Brigadier General Ali Mohammad Naimi said the recent 12-day conflict involving Israel and the United States proved that a military option against Iran has failed. He claimed Iran's armed forces are now in a stronger position to determine the outcome of any future confrontation. Naini also dismissed recent U.S. military deployments, including the arrival of an American aircraft carrier in the region, as an old tactic of intimidation. He said such moves reflect confusion in Washington following Iran's resistance during last year's conflict and during unrest inside the country earlier this month. The IRGC spokesman claimed that efforts to create instability in Iran have been unsuccessful, citing what he called strong public unity and national cohesion. The statements come as tensions remain high between Tehran and Washington, with both sides issuing warnings while continuing military posturing in the region.